My name's Tom Jennings, and this is the 24 Frames cast. My apologies for the lack of no show last week. I was down looking after my father, and quite frankly, time got ahead of me, and I just didn't get the chance to record anything, or even have a look through the archives to see if there's anything I could post. So here we are back this week, and I'm going to do something slightly new today. Now, I love reading books about film. It's one thing watching them, but a good book on the subject can make you see them in a completely different way, from admiring a performance even more to recognising and appreciating a given film's place and significance in history, as well as simply giving you another list of films to get through on top of the several across various notebooks that you already have. So I thought it might be nice to share with you some recommendations that I feel you may enjoy and even learn from. And I'm going to kick this off with an absolute gem, so much so that I was actually disappointed that it ended. Now, I have to offer a caveat here. I love reading, but yes, I do also listen to audiobooks, and it's a debate for another day whether listening to an audiobook is the same as reading a book. I don't really care. I read books and I listen to audiobooks, and I don't really have one preference over the other. But one of my other passions in life is cooking, and I always try and have a film related audiobook on the go whilst I'm doing this. And if any of you live alone, I can, and this is one loser tip I can pass on to another, is I do batch cooking. So I've got a load of meals prepared during the week, and I will spend the first 4 hours of a Saturday doing this whilst listening to whatever it is I've got going on at the moment, and it always kind of rolls into the 12:30 kickoff on TNT Sports and my first beer of the day. It really is one of the small joys in life. I would like to also add, I do have a girlfriend, so please don't take too much pity on me, but I am going to kick things off with the last audiobook that I actually listened to, and don't worry, I've already ordered the book on Amazon for payday, so I will have a reference copy of it. But it was Alan K. Rhodes' Michael Curtiz, A Life in Film.
If you don't mind, you fill in the names. That'll make it even more official.
You think of everything, don't you?
And the names are Mr. and Mrs. Victor Laszlo.
But why my name, Richard?
Because you're getting on that plane.
I don't understand. What about you?
I'm staying here with him till the plane gets safely away.
No, Richard, no. What has happened to you last night?
Last night we said a great many things. You said I was to do the thinking for both of us. Well, I've done a lot of it since then. It all adds up to one thing. You're getting on that plane with Victor where you belong.
But, Richard, no,
Now, you've got to listen to me. You have any idea what you'd have to look forward to if you stayed here? 9 chances out of 10 we'd both wind up at a concentration camp. Isn't that true, Louis?
I'm afraid Major Strasser would insist.
You're saying this only to make me go.
I'm saying it because it's true. Inside of us, we both know you belong with Victor. You're part of his work, the thing that keeps him going. If that plane leaves the ground and you're not with him, you'll regret it. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon and for the rest of your life.
But what about us?
We'll always have Paris. We didn't have, we lost it until you came to Casablanca. We got it back last night.
When I said I would never leave you.
And you never will. But I've got a job to do, too. Where I'm going, you can't follow. What I've got to do, you can't be any part of. Ilse, I'm no good at being noble, but it doesn't take much to see that the problems of 3 little people don't amount to a hill of beans in this crazy world. Someday you'll understand that. Now. He's looking at you, kid.
Casablanca might well be the greatest Hollywood film ever made. And every time I watch it, it never fails to impress or move me. I bought it on DVD, I bought it on Blu-ray, and I own it on UHD. And I would say probably I must have watched it over the past 20 years at least 10 times. And last year I wrote down, me and my girlfriend wrote a list of films that she had never seen before. It was a list of classics, and Casablanca was on it, and she loved it as well. And I'm hoping that sometime soon it comes on the big screen so I can see it how it was intended. But if you were to ask, for example, people who directed Jaws, it's highly likely that they would know that it was Steven Spielberg. If you were to ask people who directed Casablanca, I don't think the ratio of those who knew it was Michael Curtiz compared to those who would be particularly high. Indeed, I think it is one of those films where we just associate it with Hollywood and probably Humphrey Bogart and Ingrid Bergman, and there is a tendency maybe that we forget that it was made by one of the most accomplished and prolific auteurs in the history of cinema. It is a Michael Curtiz film, and much of what we admire about Casablanca, its look, its pace, the performances, are the result of him and his directorial vision. And it's why I think that Michael Curtiz, A Life in Film, a valuable biography about the director, because what Alan Road has done with this biography is not only has he documented the life and career of Michael Curtiz, but he has also provided an illuminating insight into the inner workings of the studio system and what being a director was like during this time. Born on December 24th, 1886, Budapest, Hungary, the young Curtiz started off life as an actor before becoming more ambitious and restless with his career, and became fascinated with the new medium of film. And by the 1910s, he had moved into directing. Although the Hungarian film industry was still young, he was seen as one of the most technically skilled filmmakers they had. He directed historical epics and adventure films and became known for large-scale productions with elaborate set. He was fast, disciplined, and intensely hard-working, all these traits which would later define his career in Hollywood. During World War I, he served in the Austro-Hungarian army, reportedly filming military documentaries as well. In 1919, he relocated to Vienna, where he continued directing and built a reputation across Central Europe. One of his most notorious films was in 1922, Sodom and Gomorrah, and it was this that really caught the eye of Hollywood. And by 1926, he had moved to the United States and had signed with Warner Brothers. I believe at this point where the book truly came alive for me, because there is a wonderfully cinematic quality to how Road writes. And on the one hand, you have the personal life of Curtiz and his Hollywood contemporaries, the polo matches, the drinks, the film nights, the meals, the affairs, the networking, and it paints a fascinating portrait of a time and era. And indeed, I think as I was listening to the audiobook, it is narrated by Grosvenor Gardner, who is one of the best audiobook narrators there is, and he is able to breathe such character into the various players in this book that it really does feel like it came to life. And it was strange actually, because as I was listening to it, I could easily imagine Michael Curtiz's life being a kind of an HBO miniseries or a HBO series based around Hollywood. It seems such a fertile ground for dramatic exploration. Curtiz was married twice in his life, and his second wife that he married in 1929, Bess Meredith, who is key to the Curtiz story, because not only was she his wife, she was also a script doctor and writer, and the pair would regularly review the work that Curtiz was given and refine characters and play out scenarios and write scenes. She was very much the creative rock in his life, and in that respect a very kind of steady element to it. But Curtiz was a serial philanderer and had various children out of wedlock. Some he would help raise financially, others he would deny all knowledge of having, and he was a regular in the Hollywood gossip columns. In particular, there was quite some fascinating insights into one of his daughters who was in and out of various institutions and hospitals and was kind of almost a figure of embarrassment for him. And there was another scandal in his life where he was caught by vice police having paid to a black couple to have sex in front of him. And what emerges is a portrait of an incredibly gifted, talented and deeply flawed person. The core of the book is Michael Curtiz's time at Warner Brothers. Now, it's almost impossible, I think, to separate the two. Warner Brothers needed Michael Curtiz, and Michael Curtiz needed Warner Brothers. And what emerges is a portrait and insight into the inner workings of the studio system during Hollywood's golden age. Curtiz wasn't really considered to be part of the auteur theory, mostly because I think where he died in 1962, before the kind of academic work in that line of cinema began, and also because he was seen as being such a studio director. He was on a salary, on average, from what you get from the book, is probably about $2,000 a week, which, by the way, barely covered his enormous, extravagant expenditure. And I suppose when we think of directors working in this, he would essentially direct whatever was given to him. And you need only see, for example, if you were to go through Curtiz's filmography, that he would direct several films a year. And I suppose the assumption one could lead to is that he would basically just tip up and say action and cut. And what the book does, I think, is really show how this simply wasn't the case. Curtiz was probably the opposite of what we would think a Hollywood studio director to be. He was constantly adapting his scripts, pushing up against his producer. Most notoriously, he seemed to work with Hal Wallis, who would produce Casablanca. And Road has access to what must have been archives of internal memos, letters, telegrams, showing the back and forth between Curtiz and the Warner Brothers, sometimes being chastised for shooting too much coverage, for being told he was running behind schedule and going over budget, constantly wanting the scripts changed and amended. And the idea that he was just some kind of tradesman who would turn up, clock in and clock out is absolutely quashed by what you read. Curtiz was obsessed with film. He lived and breathed the medium, and I think it's reflected in what you see on screen. Were, for example, the adventures of Robin Hood made by just some technician, it wouldn't look anywhere near as incredible it does. And what makes Curtiz's accomplishments at Warner Brothers all the more impressive is how much you learn Warner Brothers, despite being a huge studio, at the hands of Jack Warner. Every single penny was accounted for. This was not a studio that threw vast sums of cash at films. Curtiz was working under very strict financial constraints, and this both translated into everything from the cost of film stock to props, and the fact that he was able to work under such conditions and under such pressure, as evidenced by some of the communications between Jack Warner and Hal Wallis and Curtiz, it makes his accomplishments even more remarkable as far as I'm concerned. And this is one of the, I think, great positives from reading this book, because I've gone back and watched a few of Curtiz's film, and before I've done so, listened to the chapter about these films, and you really do appreciate the man and his craft all the more. And I would like to also point out that when the kind of the structure of the book kind of takes place, where we go from film to film, and there's normally kind of a background about the film's production's anecdotes from the production. Curtiz had a lot of run-ins with his leading stars. Humphrey Bogart in particular was a keen practical joker, and there was also some massive falling outs. Errol Flynn on charge of the Light Brigade, 25 horses actually perished on that production, and this caused huge conflict between Curtiz and Flynn. And Curtiz comes across as a man who was both incredibly loyal, yet also could be a complete tyrant to people on set. He had a particular hatred, it seems, of sound engineers, and they were regularly the wrong end of his wrath. But on the flip side, he could be incredibly generous and nurturing of those around him, especially many of the stars who got their first roles in his films. And what I also liked about this book is how it chronicles the technological changes in cinema. Curtiz was someone who worked in silent films, and then the adaptation to the talkies, and also through to the CinemaScope widescreen age. And he was a director who had to adapt to how Hollywood and technology was moving forward. And I can't think of many directors who would have been through so many stages of film history. And of course, Curtiz's most memorable work is going to be Casablanca, and I'm pleased to say that Road manages to find a way into talking about that film that still feels fresh. There's so much been written about it, so much said about it, and he really goes in on the making of Casablanca from Curtiz's point of view. And again, how can you not love Casablanca even more than you can already? Well, after listening to this book, you certainly walk away, I think, with even more appreciation for his work on it. And I find I'm struggling to find any flaws with this book. It is absolutely fascinating stuff, and you get so much more than just a biography. I think it really is a genuine piece of film history about the studio system, a really good way of understanding how the technical changes in cinema affected film style and how directors went about their work. And the best thing for me as well is that I've got now a list of Michael Curtiz films that I'm going to watch. And next week I'm going to do a bonus episode where I talk about some of the films of Curtiz that I watched. Not kind of whole massive reviews, but a few familiar ones and a few ones that I dare say have kind of slipped under people's radar, which will complement this episode. So I will leave links in the show description of where you can either get the audiobook or the hard copy of the book. I would recommend, if you are into audiobooks though, I would really recommend this one, because as I said, the Grover Gardner narration is absolutely spot on, and it really did come to life. So there it is then. Alan K. Rhodes, Michael Curtiz, A Life in Film, a book I cannot recommend enough. So that's going to be it for this episode of the 24 Frames cast. I hope you enjoyed it. And also, if you have any film book recommendations, do send them my way to 24framescast@gmail.com. Many thanks for listening, and I'll be in contact soon. Bye.